Students, in the previous video we had seen about the energy band diagram. So in this video we will see about the light emitting diodes and the LED structures. So here your optical source or emission of light is going to take place. It can take place either simultaneously or it can be by a stimulated operation. That is, when a photon is going to be incident on the energy on the electron, then in that case the electron can fall from the conduction band to the valence band. So when the electron automatically falls after a certain amount of time from the conduction band to the valence band, that type of emission is going to be called as the spontaneous emission. Or if your electron is going to be falling from the conduction band to the valence band by an incident photon, then in that case we call that type of emission to be your stimulated emission there. So here in this case, for the spontaneous or the stimulated emission to take place, an energy must be supplied. That is, the energy must be supplied to boost the electron from the lower energy level to a higher energy state. So here the energy can come from many sources there. So either it can be coming from a heat, that is an incandescent light or an electric discharge, or it can be from an electrical current or a bioluminescence, firefly luciferase enzyme. So by any one of these forces, the energy can come from any one of these sources there. So here at optical sources, we say that it is nothing but a hybrid device where it is going to convert an electrical signal into an optical signal there. So here when I am going to have, our main purpose is to launch these optical signals into the optical fiber for the data transmission purposes there. So here your device, the device is going to consist of an interface circuit, a drive circuit and the components for the optical sources. So here the LEDs, that is the optical sources are nothing but your LEDs, your edge emitting LEDs or surface emitting LEDs and your laser diodes. So here the optical sources are going to find applications in the area of medical, automotive, analytical equipments and communications and industries. There's a wide range of applications there. So the types of optical sources that we are going to use is tungsten, deuterium, mercury, hollow cathode, lamp. Here optical sources mainly which is going to be suited or specifically suited for fiber optic communication systems are your light emitting diodes and laser diodes. So under light emitting diodes we are going to have different types. One is a surface light emitting diode and the other one is a edge emitting light emitting diode and next is a superluminescent light emitting diode. Laser diodes, if you are going to see, we are going to have a distributed feedback laser and a distributed Bragg reflector laser. So here what are the requirements for an optical sources? The physical dimensions to suit the optical fiber. So here in this case the optical source should have a suitable dimension to suit your optical fiber there. So it should have a narrow radiation pattern or the beam width so that maximum energy can be coupled into the fiber. Next is linearity. Linearity is nothing but the output light power is going to be directly proportional to the driving current. Now the fourth advantage is it should be directly, it should have the ability to directly modulate by varying the driving current. The source should have the ability to directly modulate the signal there. And next is fast response time. Here in this case, immediately when a light is going to be instant, that LED source should be immediately able to absorb it and convert it into a modulated signal. So the response time should be fast. An adequate output power into the fiber is the next requirement there. Then you are going to have a narrow spectral width. So the spectral width should be narrow so that maximum light can be coupled into the fiber. Stability and efficiency of the optical source is mostly required and the driving circuit issues should be taken into consideration, and the cost and reliability, it should be reliable as well as the cost should be a very low for the case of your optical sources. So first we will see the basic LED operation. So in a basic LED operation we are going to take a PN junction where a PN junction is going to act as an active or recombination region. So when the P and N junctions are going to be joined, we are going to have the active or recombination region that is going to be present at the junction there. So when the p-n junctions are going to be forward biased, we are going to have the electrons and holes to be combined either radiatively, it is going to emit the electrons, or non-radiatively, it is going to emit the heat. This is the simple LED operation there. So here in this case, if I am going to take the energy band diagram, this is going to be the valence band and this is going to be a conduction band. So here the band gap energy between the valence band and the conduction band is going to be around 1 electron volts. And when an electron is going to be, that is when an energy, when an electron is going to be incident, or when a light is going to be incident on this valence band, the electrons will move from the valence band to the conduction band. So after some time, the electrons will move from the conduction band to the valence band there. So in that case, there is an electron hole recombination to take place there. So here we can see that this is a homojunction. So homojunction means when the p and n type are going to be made of the same material, we call it as your homojunction material there. So this is your energy band diagram where this is going to be your p-type material and this is your n-type material. So in your n-type material, we are going to have the electrons to be present, and in your p-type material, we are going to have the holes to be present. So when an electron falls from this valence band to the conduction band, a light is going to be emitted, where this light is going to have an energy of h mu or hf. So here this is going to have an energy, that is when a light is emitted, it is going to have an energy of h mu there. So here the emitted wavelength is going to depend upon the band gap energy there. So here a transition can take place from any energy state in either band to any other state in the other band. So in that case, it's going to be a range of different wavelengths which is going to be produced in spontaneous emission there. So here your LEDs are going to produce a range of wavelengths that is about 80 nanometers. So when I'm going to take, now we'll see about your PN junction. So generally when a PN junction is going to be taken, it is going to be called as a homojunction, because PN junction is going to be made up of same semiconductor material there. So here the electron hole recombination is going to occur in a wider layer there. So around 10 micrometers there. So here in this case, when the electron hole recombination takes place, there is going to be, that region is going to be depleted of the charge carriers there. So here in this case, the charge carriers will not be confined to the at the vicinity of the junction there. So as a result, the high current densities cannot be realized there. So here this is your working of your LEDs. So here when I am going to have this p-type material, this is your n-type material. When the p and n-type material are going to be joined, we are going to have a junction there, where in this junction you are going to have the electron hole combination to takes place. When the electron hole recombination takes place, a light is going to be emitted, where the light is going to have an energy of h mu. So here we know that an LED is forward bias. So LED is forward bias means P should be connected to the positive terminal and N should be connected to the negative terminal there. So through your resistance R. So here this is your substrate material. This is going to be your N-type material. This is your P-type material. This is the active region where your electrons and holes combine and the light is going to be emitted. So we can see that the light is emitted on all the directions there. So this is the internal structure, how your LED is going to be emitted there. So here in this case, your forward bias, as I said, so this is your N-type material connected to your negative terminal, and this is your P-type material connected to the positive terminal. So when I'm going to give a negative terminal here, in this case the electrons will repel and the electrons will start moving towards the junction there, and holes will start moving towards the junction there. When the holes and electrons recombine, electrons will be radiated, and these electrons are going to, that radiated energy is going to be, radiated light is going to be called as the photons, and these photons will be incorporated into the fiber there, where that optical power, that light that is going to be incorporated in the fiber is going to have an optical power Pt. Okay, so this is your operation of your LED diode. So your light emitting semiconductors, we can use different materials there. So the different materials and the different wavelengths, the materials are going to have different wavelength range and band gap energy there. So your aluminum, gallium, indium phosphide is going to have a wavelength range of 0.61 to 0.68, band gap energy is going to be 1.8 to 1.94. So when I am going to use your indium gallium arsenide phosphide, it is going to have the wavelength range of 0.9 to 1.7. The band gap energy is going to be 0.73 to 1.35. So for different materials, we are going to have the different wavelength range and different band gap energy range. So these are the different materials which are going to be used in your light emitting semiconductors. So here in this case, when I am going to use carrier confinement problem is going to be resolved. They are going to have a carrier confinement problem there. So when I am going to use a homojunction there. So this carrier confinement problem can be resolved by using a sandwiching layer can be solved by sandwiching a thin layer between the P and N type material there. So here in this case, the middle layer, the thin layer which I am going to use between the P and N type material, it can be or may not be doped. So in that case, there is going to be the carrier confinement is going to occur because there is going to be a band gap discontinuity of the junction there. So such types of junction are going to be called as a heterojunction, and this structure is going to be called as the double heterostructure there. So here in this case, our for an optical communication system, the requirement should be, the bit rate should be in the range of 100 to 2 megabits per second, and the optical power should be in the range of tens of microwatts. So in that case, if I want this requirement, the LEDs are going to be taken as the best suitable optical source. So here your LED structures, we are going to use a heterojunction structure there. So a heterojunction structure is nothing but it is going to be an interface between two adjoining crystals, single crystal semiconductors with different band gaps there. So heterojunctions can be of two types, a isotype or anti-isotope. So isotope means it can be of two materials are going to be of same N and N type or P type. It is isotope material there. Anti-isotope is nothing but different materials, it is P and N type material we are going to use. So double heterojunction structure, why we are going to go for double heterojunction structure is to achieve the efficient confinement of your emitted radiation. So in that case, the confinement of the emitted radiation is very important. So for that we are going to go for your double heterojunction structure in the LEDs there. So here in this case, the double heterojunction is going to be formed by joining the dissimilar semiconductors there. So here in this case, we are going to use two different semiconductors on each side of the active region. So here we are going to show the double heterojunction light emitter. Here in this case, this is your active region. So on the either side of this active region, I am going to have your N-type indium phosphide material. On the other side, I am going to have your P-type indium phosphide material. The thin layer that is going to be present, active layer that is going to be present between the P and N type material is nothing but your indium gallium arsenide phosphide, which is going to be of N type material there. So here the different energy levels we are going to use. So here when I am going to use for an N type material, this is going to be the whole barrier concentration level, and this is going to be the electron barrier concentration level there. So here this is going to be the conduction band, and this is going to be a valence band. Here your electrons or injected electrons are going to be present here, and the band gap energy is going to be around 1.35 electron volts. And the center, if you are going to see, you are going to have the band gap energy to be around 1.95 electron volts, where the electron hole recombination is going to take place in this active region. So when an electron hole recombination takes place, a light is going to be emitted, and that light is going to be called as the photon, which is going to have an energy of 1300 nanometers there. And on the other side, you are going to have your P-type indium phosphide material, where which is going to have the electron hole carrier barrier to be present here. So that means that this is your concentration, your electron barrier is going to be this much, and this is going to be the injected holes that are going to be present there. So this is your valence band, and this is going to be your conduction band. So we are going to have different energy levels. So here in this case, we say that with respect to refractive index, if I am going to say, the active region is going to have a higher refractive index compared to the either side of the P and N type material there. So here the sides of the active region are going to have a lower refractive index, and this is going to have, the active region is going to have a high refractive index there. So we can see that this is going to form like a waveguide region there. So here the crossed hatch region. So here in that case it is going to represent the energy levels of the free charge there. So here a recombination is going to occur only in the active indium gallium arsenide phosphide layer. So the two materials are going to have two different band gap energies and the different refractive indices there. So the changes in this band gap energies are going to create the potential barrier there for both the holes and electrons. So the free charges can recombine only in the narrow, well-defined active layer side there. So double heterojunction structure will confine both the holes and the electrons to the narrow active layer. So under forward bias, we can see that there will be a large number of carriers injected into the active region where they are going to be efficiently confined there. So here in this case the carrier recombination occurs in the small active region, so leading to an efficient device there. So what is the advantage is the active region is going to have a higher refractive index compared than the materials on either side. So as a result the light emission is going to occur in an optical waveguide and which is going to produce a narrow output beam. So here in this case we are going to have a narrow output beam so that we can couple the light into the fiber efficiently. That is the advantage of your double heterojunction structure. Thank you.